Alright YouTube, Moose Cow here with another Kings and Kaisers rules video. This time I'm going to be going over rules for Zeppelins, bombers, and railway guns, along with strategic bombing raids and how those work, and also strategic bombardments, which is what railway guns can do. So, if you've ever played Out of Box 1914, none of these units are in that. These are all expanded units. These are the cards. If you have the Kings and Kaisers, the second half of the rule deck with the rule references, you'll get these unit profiles briefly describing for expanded air units, Zeppelins and bombers, and then also trucks and railway guns. I'm not going to go over trucks because I feel like they're pretty self-explanatory. Maybe in the future I'll do a little video for trucks and cavalry, but for the most part, I'm just covering these three units here today. So here's the here's a little close-up of the card. You can pause the video if you want to read these notes. Same with this video, or same with that video. This card. Okay. Here, I'll get railway guns up nice and in focus. There we go. Okay. And there's trucks for you as well. Again, Zeppelins, bombers. Again, pause the video for if you want to take your time reading these. Okay, so there's your little cliff notes, right? Okay. And then if you have the rule book, your Kings and Kaisers rule book, this is the version 1.5 rule book. Back of the manual on page 36, you have a more fleshed out unit profile for the expanded game units, which covers your trucks again, railway guns, Zeppelins, bombers. Also on page 37, you'll have the expanded game facilities, which are airship bases, and those are tied hand in hand with Zeppelins. Okay. You also have the expanding hero units profile up there. I've already covered them in the German special rules because of the Red Baron. The German special rules video, Germany special rules for Germany video, the German Empire video that I did. I already covered that there, so I won't be touching on that today. But anyway, we're covering these three expanding units right here. Okay. We'll also be talking about strategic bombing raids, which is on page 38. And also air transports, which you can do with Zeppelins. You can't use bombers for air transports, but you can use Zeppelins to air transport infantry. Okay. Anyway, I'll be going over these, starting with Zeppelins, going to bombers, and then wrapping around to railway guns. Okay. All right. So, I'm going to read over these profiles, before I do that, I just want to note that of these three units, they're expanded units. They're not required to play the base game. However, if you only had to pick one of the three, I would highly recommend playing with Zeppelins. If you don't have to have the bombers, I would recommend Zeppelins. Now, all three of the pieces, the types of pieces that you see here, these are all 3D printed pieces I've gotten from historical board gaming. I got these and painted them years ago when I had time during the pandemic to figure all this out. Primed them, painted them, clear coated them, sealed them. It was a process. The Zeppelins are available in the 3D printed pieces. Not these ones, not these specific ones. What I'm talking about is all new molds. These Zeppelins, I don't have them, but Madman did make some 3D printed pieces, which our great friend Rommel manufactures essentially. And if you they are available, they should be available on Combat Miniatures along with the other expanded units like Cavalry and stuff that don't come in the base game for Kings and Kaisers. We are currently working on railway gun pieces. If you do not want to paint these pieces currently, or you're impatient and can't wait till when we get those pieces properly made, there are just simple markers similar to like this airship base and field technology tokens, not tokens, field technology markers. There's markers like that on HPG for railway guns, and they're in two colors, gray and like a smoke black kind of, and I'll just use those for France, but you can use those as cheap, easy substitutes. The bombers here, again, they're all 3D printed pieces from HPG. These ones here are all nation specific, although Ottomans didn't actually have any bombers, so I just gave them German bombers and painted those. Japan, they're the same mold as British bombers, and then the Soviet and Russian, both the Russian bombers are the same because that made sense. You'll also need bomber markers for bombers and Zeppelins, and these are the flight stand variation, but you can also get bomber markers that are not flight stand specific. The ones that Madman designed, they come on a base, on a 3D printed base, and you can cut those off and do this with them if you want to. If you want to magnetize them, that's up to you. I love magnetizing air units. I think it's a lot of fun. And I also recommend, because Zeppelins can act as air transports, I recommend getting some of these markers. They're from Combat Miniatures, and also these cargo markers from Combat Miniatures, which Rich at Combat Miniatures made these per my suggestion. And you can also use these, like just for example, you can use these with transports as well, which is primarily actually what I would use them for, but they work with Zeppelins as well, and you can just put the cargo next to them. Anyway, with that little bit out of the way, let's get into Zeppelins and strategic bombing raids, and then we'll go to bombers, which operate very similarly, and then railway guns, and then strategic bombardments, which again similar. Okay, so let's see if I can stay focused on this and not get too much of a space cadet explaining this up. Anyway, okay, so bombers cost 11 IPCs. Actually, you know, let me just start off reading the brief unit profile, because hey, I worked really hard on this. Okay, so so Zeppelins, they cost 11 IPCs. They attack at 3, defend at 1. The /1 is in reference to fighting and interceptions. Okay, and then they can move 6. They are the only unit in Kings and Kaisers that can move up to 6. Bombers, by comparison, can move up to 4, and bombers cost 9 IPCs. They attack at 4 and then do 1 at interceptions and also dogfights. And then they defend at 1, much like Zeppelins and stuff. But anyway, we're going to just read over Zeppelins real quick here. So Zeppelins can only be purchased by the German Empire, and only up to 2 Zeppelins can be in play at any given time. So you're only going to need 2 Zeppelins. If you only going to need 2. If the German Empire has 2 Zeppelins in play during the purchase and repair units phase, they may not purchase any. Each Zeppelin starting their primary movement phase at a friendly territory with an airship base, which is what, that's the facility that they tie into. So you need both in order to play with them. Speaking of which, HPG, they sell their markers in 5. I would say you would only need absolutely a max of 5. Usually only 2 or 3 end up in play. But anyway, they sell them in 5s. You wouldn't need any more than 5. I pretty much guarantee you. Let's see. Okay. Each Zeppelin starting their primary movement phase at a friendly territory with an airship base may load up to a 2-bomb payload, or be designated as an air transport. Zeppelins can attack or strategically bomb once per bomb payload. See Strategic Bombing Raids, page 38. Zeppelins cannot participate in sea combat. Zeppelins do not participate in dogfights or determine air supremacy. And Zeppelins may not load onto transports. Okay? Fair enough. So I'll read the bomber profile when I get to that. Oh, and moving over just to the airship base facility. They cost 4. They can't move or defend or attack or any of that. Airship bases may be may only be purchased by the German Empire. Airship bases in friendly territories are used to load Zeppelins with either their bomb payload or infantry units. If a territory with an airship base is captured, the airship base is destroyed. Airship bases can only be placed in original German territories that were controlled at the start of their turn. Okay? All right. I'll come back to that rule book when I get to bombers. Okay. So, starting setup, if you're playing with these expanded units, you add 2. Let's see. See if I can get a little more direct light. Okay. All right. A little dark here, but this part of the board, but I think you can see it well enough. So you add these 2 Zeppelins and 1 airship base in the starting setup in Brandenburg. They are noted in the setup of the rule book with asterisks, okay? Zeppelins can move up to 6 spaces, like I said, and air units, if they've conducted combat, they may finish their movement in the very brief finish air movement phase that we added, okay? So they can move up to 6, and then you have to land them back in a territory that contains German units and stuff like that, right? So move up to 6 total, move values and all that and stuff. So right off the bat, you can choose to load them with bombs from the airship base, or you can load them with up to 2 infantry each. So typically, I like to use them for bombing. You can use them for air transports to move units around. If you air transport them if you air transport infantry with them, they have to be moved to friendly territories that contain German units. They cannot be moved in like BBR style or to conduct like air raids. You can't use them in combat to transport infantry into combat. They don't work that way. This is World War I, not World War II. So these air transport markers, focus. Okay, these air transport markers. I just like that they say transport on them. The HBG ones have like symbols that you have to be in the know of in terms of like what they mean. These combat miniature ones, they just say transport. They do have parachutes on them, but again, there's no transporting into combat, okay? So, all right. Sorry, I had to put some pieces back up. Okay. So you got these 2 Zeppelins in Brandenburg, right, at the start of the game. You can move them up to 6 spaces. When you use them to conduct a strategic bombing raid, you only use 1 bomb at a time, okay? So basically, if you're going to load them with bombs, you can go and attack them and then land them elsewhere, and then on the second, and use 1 bomb. So you would take 1 off after, let's say you invade Belgium, right? Drop off 1 bomb, you can land it elsewhere that has at least a German infantry. Next turn, you can use them again in another round of combat. Now the Zeppelin is empty. All right. Now the Zeppelin is empty. You got to get it back to an airship base to reload it. So that means either the Zeppelin has to make its way back to here, so that on its next turn you can load it with infantry or more bombs, or you have to build another airship base in a German territory. Like say you pay 4 IPCs, put an airship base in Rhine province. Now the Zeppelins that begin their movement there can get loaded with bombs again. All right. All right. So I think that's a little self-explanatory right there in terms of their basic combat. And again, they roll at 3 or less. If they do not have bombs, they always have a defense value of 1, because if you research these things, they are armed with machine guns still for defense against aircraft and whatnot. Okay. All right. Now the good stuff with strategic bombing. Okay. I'm not going to read this whole chunk. This will all be overall very, if you want to, you can pause it and read it on your own accord, or you can get the rulebook file and read it that way. But there you go. All right, here's the air transport rule. which I'll come back to after I tackle this. Okay. All right. So basically, right away, there's no if you played BBR or any other Axis and Allies game, for the most part, there's no built-in anti-aircraft fire in this game at all. You build out of your cities. The cities do not have anti-aircraft fire built into them, okay? So right off the bat, on Germany's first turn, they have two opportunities if they want to do strategic bombing raids. They have two opportunities they can do. They can go 1, 2, 3 to Petrograd and bomb Russia's capital there. Or they can go 1, 2, 3, 4 and attack Britain and bomb London, provided they're also moving into Belgium, okay? Because that's the only spot they can land. If they move into Belgium, then they can finish their air movement phase and go 5, 6 and land there. They have to end their movement in territories with the German infantry, okay? German infantry that come in from land. German infantry they air transport, those don't count. They have to end their movement in territories with German infantry, or offload German infantry into a territory that has other German units, and then they can move elsewhere if they want. But anyway, I digress. That's getting a little ahead of myself with the air transport rule. So they have like two opportunities. So let's say Germany splits and goes in either direction, or let's say, and then also to touch off, since I talked about where this could finish its movement, this one, since it went 1, 2, 3, can just go back to Brandenburg. So if you want to just bomb Petrograd all game, that can be very helpful, but you also kind of want to bomb over here and stuff. But essentially, Germany has this edge with their Zeppelins of where they can bomb, but it's relatively contained to here, unless they get them down into Africa, because they can only be reloaded at original German territories that have airship bases, right? Can't build airship bases in France, for example, or Belgium. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so strategic bombing raids. Backing up to that, let's say the Zeppelins let's say both Zeppelins go to bomb Petrograd. Okay. There are no air units starting off the game in the setup. There's no air units. There's no fighters in Petrograd or in London. So there's nobody to intercept them. Basically, the only way to shoot down a Zeppelin is by being intercepted, okay? And even then, the Zeppelins get to shoot back at the interceptors and stuff. So in Petrograd here, they have 2 bombs each, but they're only dropping 1. They can only drop 1 at a time. You can't drop 2 bombs at the same time. And there's nobody to intercept them. So they would both drop a bomb, and on rolls of 1 through 3, the bombs are accurate and they hit their target. Okay. All right, a 2 and a 3. So these are both accurate. You would then re-roll both of them. And the total, we got a 6 and a 2. 6 and a 2, so 8, okay? That means Germany, right off the bat, has destroyed 8 IPCs from the Russian player's treasury. So the Russian player immediately loses 8 IPCs, and it's not like, and it's just removed from their treasury, right? It's not like BBR or Global or any of the Axis Allies games where you just damage their factory and then you have to pay off damage the factory. No, you just destroy somebody's money, okay? So that's the big thing there. And like I said, they both could go theoretically to London and do the same thing again. Okay, now that is a 1, which means it hits. That's a 4, which means nothing. So you'd only reroll 1, and the British player loses $5. Now, if this was the second turn of the game, right? And on the first turn, Britain bought 2 fighters, and those 2 Zeppelins came in. Well, now those 2 fighters and those 2 Zeppelins have to square off each other. Sorry, let me rephrase this. If the defending player, the British player, chooses to intercept, so they get to choose if they want to intercept or not. They decide they do. So this doesn't really matter what order, but The interceptors, let's just roll for the interceptors. They would roll 2 dice at 1. Ooh, they got 1. And then the 2 Zeppelins would fight back, and ooh, they got 1 as well. It always stings to lose a Zeppelin, though. So 1 Zeppelin would be gone, 1 fighter would be gone. Now the surviving Zeppelin drops its bomb, gets a 2. It made contact, it hit its target. British player loses $2. So all that for $2. Britain loses $2 in a fighter. Germany loses a Zeppelin. So not the greatest trade-off there, I would say, because Zeppelins cost 11 IPCs, and it always stings as the German player to have to rebuy them. So maybe you want to be more cautious with them. But that is something that is a way to utilize them, and that basically shows off how strategic bombing raids work. Like the interceptors, we just have some examples here. Germany could bring along some fighters if they're close enough, because fighters only have a range of 2 in this game. If they're close enough, Germany could bring in more fighters, or the Red Baron, their hero unit, to act as escorts. So if in a situation, if Germany was on Paris's doorstep, they could then go 1, 2, right? So then in this instance, you'd have 2 fight if France chose to intercept. Let's make it more interesting. France chooses to intercept. We got 4 1s that are blanks, and then we have 3 1s. And they get 1 hit, so let's say Germany chooses an interceptor, and then the Zeppelins drop their bombs and, continue as normal. In this instance, only 1 is effective, because that was a 4. Then you re-roll the result, 4. So France would lose 4 IPCs, okay? So that is basically strategic bombing in a nutshell. And to reload their bomb payload again, the Zeppelins at least, they have to go back to a territory that has an airship base, all right? Again, they can build an airship base. You can only have 1 airship base per territory, much like a field technology, basically. There's no benefit. There would be no benefit to having 2 airship bases in 1 territory. Let's see. Okay. If you use them as air transports, so let's just read this little profile here real quick. Zeppelins designated as air transports may load up to 2 infantry each. An air transport of 1 power cannot load the infantry of another. Only 1 air transport may offload units per friendly territory containing at least 1 German land unit by the end of the mobilized new units phase. They cannot offload into hostile or contested territories. Infantry remain on air transports as cargo, may be marked with cargo markers placed beneath them, and cannot participate in combat, nor do they fulfill the territory's infantry requirement for the air transport of other units. Air transports still have a defense of 1. Air transports are no longer designated as such once their transported units are offloaded. Okay, so let's change one of these Zeppelins to a, look at that little thing. Just focus. Come on. There you go. I love these things. I really do love these things. Anyway, I digress. So basically the rule book is saying kind of have them displayed as such. Okay. These dice are just showing they attack at a 3, Zeppelins in general attack at a 3, defend at a 1. That's my little note for that. They carry the 2 bombs. Okay, now if you're using them as air transports, just to kind of explain this video is already much longer than I expected. I just want to be clear with all this. So during the war, Germany did at one point send a Zeppelin down towards Africa to try and resupply their guys down in, I believe it was Germany, East Africa, or wherever in Africa was fighting. They actually did send a Zeppelin down there, but while it was en route, they decided to call it back. For some reason, they canceled it, but they did historically send a Zeppelin down there. So you can send a Zeppelin down there. The issue only with loaded with infantry or not, you can send a Zeppelin down there. Basically, you would have to just gradually get it down there, with them starting in Brandenburg, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's say you could theoretically rail an infantry from Munich down to over here, and then somewhere over here, like say, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is probably not going to be on Germany's first turn. So Germany's, say, this is how you get one down here as quick as possible. Germany's first turn, transport 2 infantry down to, let's say, Dalmatia, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, but they can't quite get further than that. This is just an instance, an example again. So you have them transported down there, turn 1, because it's a friendly territory, and you've railed at least 1 infantry from Bavaria in order to do so down there, okay? All right, next turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. You might not be able to get down there right away. Probably be a little more gradual, but essentially, and I've seen this, I've seen Madman do this. I've seen Madman basically get an infantry to Greece. A German infantry makes its way gradually during the game down to Greece. The Zeppelins come down and hang out here, and then in Greece, while Greece is, Austrian controlled and is friendly and so on and so forth. Then you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you get 2 more dudes down there. If you still control Germany, East Africa, you can get these guys down there, offload. Then on your next turn, you can build an airship base and reload those Zeppelins with bombs. So it takes a while to get down here, but you can do it. And if Germany actually does get their Zeppelins down here, they can cause a bit of chaos here. They might miss their Zeppelins being up there, but they can do quite a bit of stuff there. Now, one thing to distinguish is you can only offload 1 air transport per territory. You can't offload 2 sets of Germans in here, but you can offload into neighboring territories as long as they're friendly and stuff like that, right? Okay, so there you go. All right, that basically covers air transports and how they're utilized. Okay. All right, so that is done. All right, this video is already long enough, but I'll just go over this real quick. Bombers, they operate the same way. The only difference is they can only carry 1 bomb at a time. They cannot be utilized as air transports, but they do attack at 4 and defend at 1. So they're a little better than bombers in terms of attack, just straight up attacking. But how they work in strategic bombing raids the same way. The main downgrade, again, they cost 9 IPCs, whereas Zeppelins cost 11 IPCs. The downgrade is that bombers only move 4 spaces instead of 6. They're not as good as that. But if you have them on the Western Front, where there's plenty of cities on the Western Front, so they can be quite useful over here. Maybe not so much over here. The main difference is that they do not, another difference between bombers and Zeppelins is that they do not need airship bases. They just reload at their major cities. So that's why I was talking about that. But basically, you can load up to 2 bombers per power's turn if they're friendly and they control, their side controls Lorraine. Up to 2 bombers can get reloaded, their payloads reloaded in Verdun on 1 power's turn, basically. So if France has 3 bombers in Lorraine for some reason, and they all need their bombs reloaded, only 2 of them on France's turn can get reloaded. Okay. All right. Yeah, that basically covers bombers. Now moving on to side note. In terms of why these cannot be utilized as air transports, I looked it up basically, and these, this was the beginning of aviation, essentially. Bombers could only load, the biggest ones were the ones that Russia had. Bombers can only really load, or these bombers can only really load like a little under 2,000 pounds worth of cargo. So that doesn't really translate to like a lot of people. But if you did want to utilize these, utilize these, have some kind of air transport rule for these, I would only do 1 infantry, not 2. Zeppelins could carry more stuff, so therefore 2 infantry, and you can also kind of view those infantry as like supplies, basically, or whatever. You know, if you think 2 infantry is enough, you can just view it as supplies, basically. But I digress. But yeah, like I said, only like less than 2,000 pounds worth of bombs. They usually just chuck the bombs like out of a window or literally just drop them with no guidance system or whatever. Anyway. All right, moving on to railway guns. I'm already at 30 minutes with this video, which is a little not what I wanted, but hey, it is what it is. So, very similar in terms of how they can bombard, but let me go over just the stats of railway guns real quick. Railway guns attack, only France and Germany can buy them. That's only those 2 powers. Speaking of which, let me backtrack, sorry. Railway guns, the manual. Oh yeah, and then I also forgot to read the bombers section. Sorry about that. So bombers. Bombers cannot be purchased until round 3 or later. Each bomber starting their primary movement phase at a friendly territory with a capital or major city may load up to 1 bomb payload, with the maximum number of bombs that may be loaded in each turn determined by the IPC value of the territory containing the city. Bombers can attack or strategically bomb once per bomb payload. Bombers cannot participate in sea combat. Only attacking bombers participate in dogfights. Ruling at 1. Bombers do not determine air supremacy. Bombers may not load onto transports. All right, I'm officially done with bombers. Railway guns. They cost 12. And again, going over this, bombers cost 9, Zeppelins cost 11. Excuse me. Railway guns cost 12. They can attack at 4. They can also attack at 3 if they are bombarding a neighboring territory. They defend at 1, so they're not good on defense, but they have a movement of 2. Excuse me. Railway guns can only be purchased by the German Empire or the French Republic. Each railway gun attacks at 4 or less and promotes the attack value of up to 3 paired infantry or tanks to roll at 3 or less. Railway guns can move to territories but must stop when entering hostile or contested territories. Railway guns are unaffected by air supremacy. Each railway gun in a friendly territory can bombard an adjacent territory that was hostile at the start of their turn at 3 or less, similar to offshore bombardment from a dreadnought, regardless of whether additional land combat is conducted in the territory or not. Units bombarded by adjacent railway guns do not get to retaliate against them. Railway guns can alternatively bombard the income of an adjacent capital or major city, just like in a strategic bombing raid, but without having to face interceptions. See page 38. These income bombardments are successful on a roll of 1 to 2, while a roll of 3 to 6 is a failed bombardment. Railway guns may not load onto transports. So, bombs from Zeppelins and bombers, they're successful on a roll of 3 or less. Railway guns, if they're going to bombard an adjacent territory, they are successful on a roll of 2 or less. So they are a little less effective, very much a fear tactic, but they're less successful than Zeppelins and bombers. However, they have a lot of flexibility because they are essentially, the same cost as 3 artillery, but they can move 2 spaces, and one of these can promote the attack value of up to 3 infantry. So again, it's like having 3 artillery that are good at attacking. Okay, so if you had just a 1 railway gun and 3 infantry attacking into the same territory, that's not a good roll. Only 1 hit. If they're conducting combat in the same territory. If you're utilizing a railway gun to bombard a territory, instead, it does not promote infantry attacking that territory. But you can just shoot a shot at a neighboring territory on a 3 or less. That's a hit. And the defender does not get to fight back against the railway gun. Now, if you're attacking the territory as well, and it was hostile at the start of your turn, you can't do this if it was contested, if you already had dudes there, right? But if you're attacking the same turn, then of course the defending units still get to fire back and fire against the units that are actually coming into the territory, but they do not get to fire against the railway gun. And again, railway guns can move 2. So instead of, they can move 2 into combat. So if you have enough of these and combined with everything else, you can be quite fearsome in that aspect. But don't go, I would say don't go too crazy on railway guns, because they don't have good defense. So you need to balance it with everything else, you know, with what you're doing. But yeah, if you do succeed in getting a bunch of these on the map, or a bunch of bombers on the map, you can do some damage and stuff. But this is very much, in general, an infantry artillery game, and fighter game. So you have to balance stuff, you know. It's especially kind of hard to demonstrate it with the starting setup, because these gradually come on the map and stuff. This is the French railway gun. This is the German Paris gun piece. They operate the same way. Again, they can promote up to 3 infantry and attack at a 4 when attacking a territory directly, or they can just bombard an adjacent hostile territory, or territory that was hostile at the start of their turn, regardless whether they're affecting it or not. So if you just have like a bunch of them, like if you have, say, Germany controls Burgundy, you can just shoot shots at Picardy, similar to like a bombardment, regardless of what, a naval bombardment, offshore bombardment, regardless whether you're invading the territory or not. But if you have if they don't have a trench works and you have 3 of these things, you can fire 3 shots, and well, these 2 miss, but France just loses a dude and they don't get to fire back if you're not invading the territory, you know. So all right, I think that just about covers it. There's not interceptions with strategic bombardments. There's not interceptions like there are with Zeppelins and bombers, but you do have a less likely success rate of, you have a less likely chance of being successful with your bombardment. So let's say there was a Paris gun in Burgundy and you chose to bombard Paris. Ooh, successful. Okay, I rolled a 1. Roll again. Oop, that one spilled out. Roll again. All right, France would lose 2 IPCs. Okay, there you have it. Apologies for the length of this video. Maybe I should have done separate videos, but you get the gist. All these 3 are kind of, you know, similar to one another, work along the same lines and stuff. Maybe I'll refilm this at some point and splice up, do individual videos and whatnot, but I feel like I've covered just about everything and stuff. So anyway, take care. We got a few days left for our first Kings and Kaisers tournament. Very excited to do that. Looking forward to it. We're gonna have 4 tables of this game going, so that is just exciting. Very, very cool. So anyway, take care, stay tuned. I'll make videos, I'll see if I can churn out another rule video before then or afterwards. And I'll probably do a little recap video of how the tournament went. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you have questions, leave them in the shout out in the comments below. If you have a question, if you have an idea, etc., whatever, feel free to email madman@grandcommandgaming@gmail.com with any questions about, you know, how to get stuff and things in general. So there you go. Take care. Thanks for watching.